Life Sciences to another exciting life science lesson. I hope you're really looking forward to it. Today we are going to do a revision exercise. You have followed us through the path that we followed with molecules of life. We've been looking at the biochemistry of living things, and today we're going to just have a bit of a recap session. We're going to go over some of the basics that you need to understand, and then we're going to do a few more questions than we usually do. We're going to delve into a few of the harder questions. So I hope you're ready for this journey. Just take a look, see where we're going with this. Right, so if we have a look at the mind map that's on the board at the moment, let's see the path that we followed so long. So we're looking at this concept called biochemistry or molecules of life. Exactly as it said, what makes living cells? So what do we need to have, right? And usually it's what do we need to eat to make sure our body is built properly, right? And that our cells, things that build our body, also work properly. So we need to be built properly and we need to work properly. Right, the concepts that we looked at were as follows, and we're going to go through them just briefly. We looked at the basic concept that the molecules are divided into organic compounds and inorganic compounds. And we quickly needed to go over that to see what the differences were. Then we looked at examples of inorganic compounds, and there we're going to look at water and what we call minerals. And then we look at our organic compounds, and those were our carbohydrates, our proteins, our lipids, and our vitamins. And with those proteins, we looked at a very important concept called enzymes. Right, just a quick recap about what an inorganic and organic nutrient is, guys. That you just need to know the basics. When we're looking at inorganic, we're looking at things that are quite simple, usually quite small, right? They don't contain carbon, whereas we're looking at organic, they are more from living things, right? Where inorganic is non-living, they're really big molecules in our body, and those usually we have to break down, and they're going to all contain carbon. Right, let's have a look at our very first inorganic. And as I said, this is probably the most important one, and this is going to be water. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the importances of water with you, right? But just realize that it's an inorganic nutrient. Remember, it's H2O, it has no carbon. And if you have a look at the diagram over here, you can see how important water is. The section that you might do after this is we're going to look at the concept of a cell. All living things are made up of cells, and the cells inside it's like a jelly, and when we make jelly, we're going to need water. And water is a really important thing. Things dissolve in the water, right? And it's easy to move. Things move in and out. Water is a really essential inorganic nutrient. Right, our nutrients or minerals, if you have a look, the reason why I've highlighted certain things in red, important concepts that you need to look at. Right, we go through the list. I'm not going to go through all of them with you, but remember, what were minerals? They were elements that we needed in certain amounts, macro minerals or macronutrients. We needed them in large amounts. So, for example, nitrogen was one of them. Calcium for our bones and our teeth. We looked at phosphorus to help with our cell membranes, right? We looked at phosphates and phosphorus. We looked at sodium, salt, all of those that we need on a daily basis, right, for our body to be healthy and to work properly. Then there was this concept of micro minerals or trace elements, things that we needed in smaller amounts. It wasn't about the importance. It was just about the amounts that we needed them in. And there we looked at iron and we looked at iodine. And when we looked at those concepts, guys, right, you'll see a lot of the questions that we looked at were food labels. And you need to know this is a very important. The deficiency diseases. What will happen if I don't have enough of this in my diet? So we looked at if I don't have calcium, there was rickets and osteoporosis. If I don't have enough nitrogen, I have a deficiency called kwashiorkor. So all of those things, right? So Why do I need it? What kind of foods are they in? So have an idea of the kind of foods that they're in and what happens, deficiency, what happens if I don't have enough? A very important concept for there. The best thing I think would be to have a table or to have a mind map where you just jot down all of those things, just to have a quick idea, right, what each of them does and why we need them. Okay, guys, then we got to the organic nutrients. And the organic nutrients, all of them that we looked at, right, have this element called carbon. Now, the first one we looked at were carbohydrates. Those are our sugars and our starches. So a carbohydrate, as I said, were our sugars, our starches. What are our starches? They're rice, they're pasta, they're potatoes. Our sugars are our fruit, our sugar that we have in our tea, right? All of those, even the sugar that we get in our milk. And those were very important because carbohydrates are our source of energy, right? Very important source of energy. Now, because these are really big, right, the word there is macro. Right? We learned about this concept called a monomer. And a monomer is a building block. And as we said, a building block, if I'm going to make a necklace, for example, here's a bead, here's another bead, and here's another bead. So that's going to be the monomers, the building blocks, right? And if I want to make something really big, what do I do when I want to make the necklace? What do I do is I join them to make something bigger. So the building blocks is each one of these single units. And when it came to carbohydrates, monosaccharides. Mono meant one, and saccharide, right, was sweet. Because sometimes when they're in that form, they are sweet. Now we looked at this concept, very important. Our monosaccharides, when we looked at them, you remember we see all these like ring-shaped structures. You don't need to know that, but you must recognize it as a carbohydrate. Now, when we looked at our monosaccharides, there were 3 examples that we paid much more closer attention to. They were the hexose sugars, hexose meaning 6, right? They had 6 carbons, they had 12 hydrogens, and they had 6 oxygens. And the 3 examples that we looked at were glucose, fructose, and galactose. And those were our monosaccharides. Whenever we eat a carbohydrate, these guys are what our digestive system is going to break it up in. But now, as I said, we are going to build with those. Now, have a look at the next concept, a disaccharide. Di means 2. So what we do here is we take one mono, let me write over there, plus a mono, and we get a disaccharide. Now, the 3 examples are maltose, sucrose, and lactose. And if you have a look at the colors, this one is when I combine 2 glucoses together. The fructose is a glucose, right? And a fructose gives me sucrose, and a glucose and a galactose gives me lactose. Both of these are nice and sweet to the taste. Then if we have a look at this bottom diagram here, let's break up the word. Poly means many. And here we had many glucose, right? So it wasn't about all the fructose and the galactose. We took glucose, many of them, all right? Thousands of them. And we joined them together to make a really big, right, polymer, right? Poly means many, and it's usually very big. And that is the polysaccharide. And if you have a look here, the examples there were starch. That's how plants store glucose. Glycogen, that's how we store glucose. And plants, when you look at the plant cell later, you're going to see plant cells have a cell wall that is made of cellulose, which is a carbohydrate. And insects, you know, when we stamp on them and we squish them and they go crack, right, that hard is called chitin, and that is also going to be a carbohydrate. Okay, guys, our next one was then lipids, and the lipids, as you see the picture at the top, right, their building blocks were here, 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. Remember, I said to you, it's the big bad wolf and the 3 little pigs, if you remember that, because pigs are fat, full of fat. And here, remember, we spoke about 2 things. Oils, all right, so lipids, sometimes we use the word fats and oils. And what is the difference? Oils are usually lipids that we find in plants. And you will see we call them polyunsaturated, and they are usually liquid, right? Think of your sunflower oil or your olive oil, right? Or any of your almond oil or coconut oil. They are in liquid form. Fats, right? Fats we usually refer to animal fat. And they get hard, like imagine after you've cooked your bacon or your meat, and when they cool down, they get hard, and these were the bad ones that we don't want to eat because they can harden in our body. All right, then the next group of organic nutrients were proteins, and they had a very different element in it. Still carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, same as my carbohydrates, but they had nitrogen. Very, very important component was the nitrogen. Now the building blocks, the monomers, right, each of these little ones, they are called amino acids. And we put all these amino acids together, usually 50 or more, and that is what we call a protein. Remember, guys, that's your meats, your chickens, your chickpeas, your soya, right, your beans and your peas, etc., your legumes. They're rich in proteins. Very, very important, enzymes, all right, are proteins. Enzymes were a biological catalyst. If you have a look over here, very important thing, all enzymes are proteins, and this is how proteins work. Remember, this is the lock and key concept where a protein or an enzyme has a specific shape, and whatever it works on, look, they fit together. Look at that. Perfect fit. And what the enzyme does, it changes. Have a look. They end up 2 separate things. The enzyme is unchanged, and we say it's a catalyst. What is a catalyst? It speeds up a reaction. So if we didn't have these, everything in our body would take forever and ever and ever, and we would be like, everything would be like dinosaurs almost, okay? At least dinosaurs were active, but it would take forever to do anything. Imagine having a sandwich and you'd probably digest it in a week's time. Okay, not good. We want to get things fast and working, and enzymes are going to do that nice and quickly for us and very efficiently. Okay, guys, and the last thing that we looked at, all right, was for the foods that we looked at, you had to identify a food test. So for each of them, we looked at a food, and we looked at a way in which we saw it's positive. So for example, let's have a look when I was using carbohydrates. Okay, if I'm looking for glucose, now this is the concept, this universal, right, agent. So this, it's a specific color. It's a chemical that we add. So if we put a glucose tube and we put some glucose in this tube, so we get some glucose powder, we put some grape juice, and we put this Benedict solution. Now, if you have a look, it's blue. All right, guys, it's blue. Now, if glucose is present and we put it in a water bath, have a look here. What do you notice? It changes color, right? So if it changes color, then whatever we're testing for has got glucose in it. All right, now starch is also a carbohydrate, and that's our potatoes and our breads, etc. And we're going to have a test there as well. Now, what we use here is called iodine solution. an iodine solution has like a browny, yellowy color to it. Now, if I was to take the iodine solution, maybe take bread and to drop it on the bread, it's going to change color. Remember, if it changed color, that means it's positive. And it changes color to a really dark blue-black. There it says purple. Very often, you'll see in some of your textbooks, they refer to it as a blue-black color. Okay, guys, the next one, all right, for the fats, that was, for me, always, I can't say a boring test, but it was such a letdown after all the carbohydrates and the proteins. And what you do is you take whatever food sample, right, you want, and here we use ethanol. That's the one that we use. It's alcohol. Remember, fats dissolve in alcohol. So they make this emulsion. So what an emulsion is, it's a mixture. We can't use water because then fats are going to float. Then we take this emulsion and we put it on some filter paper. And as I said to you, some of us do this at home with our t-shirts. We get this oil drop, this translucent, greasy spot. That is going to be a positive test for lipids. Then the protein one. This is quite important because proteins, we can make it as an enzyme as well. Once again, we take a food sample. What we usually use over here is egg, because we know egg is rich in protein. And we add this reagent called a biuret. It's a combination of sodium hydroxide and copper sulfate, and it's a beautiful blue color, as you can see there. If there is protein, it turns to a purple. Purple for proteins. That would be a positive test. It's actually a test for peptides, and what a peptide is a protein bond. All right, guys, and then our last thing that we looked at were vitamins, and vitamins were also organic molecules that we needed in our diet that also helped us, our body, to keep healthy. And we looked at the vitamins that were soluble in fat, and those were vitamins A, D, E, and K, and those that were soluble in water that we need to eat more often, and that was vitamin B and C. And the same as for minerals. You needed to know, why do I need them? Like for vitamin A for my eyes. What happens if I don't eat it? For example, night blindness, the deficiency disease, and have some idea of some of the fruit or food that it's going to be in. Right, guys, that's it for now. All right, information overload maybe. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back from your break, Life Sciences. I hope you had a bit of a stretch, got all the blood running, all right, and all the oxygen going to the brain, because now we're going to work on questions. So we're going to have a look at the possible questions we could ask on this section. There is so much that you can do. If possible, try and get hold of past exam papers, and that might help you, right, to do revision for the sections, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into those questions. All right, question one, I always start off with a bit of a multiple choice over here. Multiple choices are always nice. It gets our brain going. A lot of words. All right, let's see what this one is. The first question is, which one of the following vitamins, so it's a vitamin, is concerned with photochemical reaction? And we're like, what is that? And already we lost, but we keep reading. In the rods and the cones of, and we still lost, but then the very last word, it tells us about the eye. Right, so which vitamin, so even if we don't understand what photochemical reaction is, which vitamin do I need for my eye? Right, so when we look at this, we think back and we look at, and we think it was the very first slide, and vitamin C I need for my blood vessels. It's not going to be that. Vitamin B I need for energy. Nope, not for my eye. Vitamin D I help with calcium, getting calcium for my bones. Definitely not that. Which process of elimination would be vitamin A? But it is because vitamin A is necessary for the healthiness of my eye so that I am not night blind at night. Right, here we have a table, and it doesn't tell us, right, what compounds there are. So there's organic compounds. We've got an X, a Y, and a Z, and it tells you, right, the elements. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, right? You're thinking, oh, what is that? And it tells you something specific after each one. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen with a ratio of 2:1. What is that? That is a carbohydrate. Okay, that is a carbohydrate. Nitrogen, I know, is a protein. So just by a process of elimination, I'm going to say to myself, this is going to be a fat, right, a lipids or an oil. We use lipids there. What is the question? Organic compounds Y and Z will probably both. Now look at Y and Z. We are looking at Y and we are looking at Z. Protein, okay, and fat. Right, will protect vital organs. Oh, fat, yes, but protein, no. Are a reserve source of energy. Once again, fat, yes, protein, not really. It can be, but we don't want it to be. Maybe, right? Changes color with iodine, right? Do I want that? Change color with iodine, right? Not. Now I'm going there. And then I say, are good insulators. And now I cross it out. And I've got all four that are correct. Now I go back to the answers. And I said, protect vital organs, definitely not. Are a reserve source of energy, right. Now I said, not usually. So yes, fats are definitely, proteins can be. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to say that it's going to be B. That some proteins, they meat, they nitrogen, they can be a source of energy. Right, let's go to our next question. Soon as we see the diagram, right, as soon as we see the diagram, we should think, okay, very important, it's enzymes. That's what I must think. Before I even read, I must recognize that it's the lock and key enzyme diagram. So let me go and read what it says. It says, study the diagram below of the lock and key theory. So if I haven't recognized it, now it's telling me. And it's telling me that's an enzyme. Now I've got questions that I need to answer. Let's have a look. All right. First question is, what is the function of an organic catalyst? So it's got nothing to do with my diagram. I don't need to read, but I need to understand that what is an organic catalyst? Guys, I'm asking you what is the function of an enzyme. And an enzyme speeds up reactions in our body. Right? That's what it does. Right? It speeds up reaction, and most importantly, what else does it do? It does not change. And we can use it over and over again. So it speeds up reaction, and it speeds up reaction, and we don't need to keep making them over and over and over again. Right, so you could see that was for 2 marks. If it was for 1 mark, I would have just written this. But the second mark asked me to be a little bit more specific. Okay, the next question, it says, what is the function of the enzyme protease in washing powders? Now, when we look at this word, what do we know about enzymes? Any kind of enzyme ends in ASE. Protein. Right, what do washing powders do? They clean food stains. So what do you think the enzyme protease in washing powders, what's it going to do? It's going to clean or get rid of protein stains. Isn't that why you use a washing powder? Right? Any kind of protein stain. If you maybe stained some meat, something you dropped, or some kind of protein, some eggs that you dropped over there, that is what that washing powder is going to do. Now, okay, now the next question actually is going to relate to the diagram. It says if structure 1, right, represents maltose. Maltose. And what is maltose? It's a disaccharide. Okay, that you must know. Remember, it's part of your biochemistry. And structure 2, over there, the green one, I'm going to do it up here, is maltase. Now, you might never have heard of maltase before, but what is the rule? Very often, if it ends in ASE, it is the enzyme. So this is the substrate, and this is the enzyme. Enzyme. Right, so it asks you, identify products 5 and 6. So maltose is a disaccharide. It's made up of 2 monosaccharides. This enzyme is going to split it into its 2 monomers. So what is maltose made up of? What are products 5 and 6? Guys, they are both glucose plus glucose. Go back to what maltose is. Maltose is a disaccharide that is made up of 2 glucose molecules. So what is the function of the enzyme? The function of the enzyme is to break it. Okay, so you might never have heard of certain things, but look at the words. ASE, an enzyme, right? You know what maltose is. It's a disaccharide. So you can make that assumption that it's going to split it into its 2 monomers, the monosaccharides. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So an investigation was carried out to determine the percentage, all right, that's what we need to look at, of different food types in a balanced diet. Now remember, what is molecules of life all about? We need to eat things to be able to build. Now here we have a table, right, not a graph, right, a graph, and we have different foods over here at the bottom. And what we know is, right, and at the bottom, it told us that there are percentages. So we are going to use this information. These are nice questions because the answers are here in front of us. We just need to be able to read from a graph. Okay, the graph is at the top corner. Let's see what the questions are. For this investigation, identify the dependent. Now guys, always remember this, okay? The dependent variable is always on the y-axis. The independent is always on the x. Now I remember this, I lie down. So if I lie down, I'm flat at the bottom, all right? I lie down. I, independent, what I chose, is at the bottom. So the dependent variable, guys, you go to your graph, you take this, and you write exactly what it says. You units everything. You don't make up your own. There it is. You take it, and that is your answer. Right, the different food types, and you tell them it's the percentage. Okay, the independent variable, is your balanced diet or your food choose. Here it says balanced diet. Okay, so here we have my independent is the balanced diet or the foods that I chose. Because that's what you did. There are certain foods that you, okay, have chosen. Now I'm trying to remember how to spell chosen. Let's rather use choose, much better that we use it that way. Okay, so there we're looking at independent, I lie down, dependent, always on the, the y-axis. And remember, y. That's how we know which the y is. Okay, now things have moved to this side. Okay, guys, our next question. All right, our next question. So let's go back. There we go. Right, now name two. That means only two. Don't go and do a whole herd of them. All right, only two is asked. From the graph that have equal percentage. Here is my percent. I'm looking for both foods that are exactly the same. As I said to you, nice and easy. I can see here, look here, their fruits are, their meat, they're exactly the same. Right, given to me, nice, there, we've got it. And what do we write? Name the two fruits. There we go. All right, fruit and meat. Fruit and meat. Okay, fruit and meat. Right, the next one. Guys, next one. Calculate the percentage difference. And as soon as I hear the word calculate, I start to sweat because I don't like maths, right? But have a look here. It's a nice one. It's given to you. Calculate the percentage difference between the vegetables and lipids. So let me go up. Here's my vegetables, and I read. It's 25. Right? Then I look at my lipids. What is my lipids? It's 15. Now, difference means minus. So if I've got 25%, right, of vegetables minus 15% of my lipids, and if my maths is going to be correct, right, I should have a 10% difference. No calculator needed here. My graph gave me all the answers that I needed. Okay, let's go to that side. Right, provide a caption for the graph. Caption. What is the word caption? Heading. And what do we do? When we write a heading, right, we start off. What kind of graph is it? It's a bar graph. Always tell your teacher what it is that you've got. And then what must be in it? Your independent and your dependent variable. A bar graph showing, all right, the percentage, and we do, okay, let me spell it correct, A-G-E, right, of different food types in, all right, a balanced diet. All right, guys, that's all that we're going to have time for in this little slot. Good time to stretch the muscles again, clear the head, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, Life Sciences. We're busy looking at the molecules of life. We're looking at revision. We did a bit of the basics on remember what it was all about, organic, inorganic, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamins, all of these food tests. And we looked at a question, all right, or two on what we can ask. And we're going to carry on with that. Now, the next question that I've chosen is an essay question. If you have a look at your exam paper, you have certain sections. And the very last section of your exam paper is going to be an essay question of around about 17 marks. And it's broken down nice, easy for you, what you need to write. So I've chosen an essay question that we're going to look at for the next, all right, for the next question. Let's have a look at the question. Right, now the question they give us a little bit of information in the beginning, and the question says, we rely on crops, right, food, produced by farmers for our source of vitamins. We've looked at vitamins throughout the series, carbohydrates, and proteins. That is something we're familiar with. To increase the crop yield. What does that mean to make more food? Right, farmers often use fertilizers. Guys, fertilizers, nitrogen. Right, just remember that. Fertilizers have got nitrogen in. Now they ask you, they set it out nicely. Provide a description for each of the following. Each of these points, we're going to see how I break it down. I would suggest you make it a paragraph. So answer each of the questions one by one. Right, as we go through it, right, we're going to see how best it works. So the first part they ask you, they want you to describe, right, the structure and function of carbohydrates and proteins. That is quite a large section of work. They're only asking for the maximum 7, but you're going to put as much information as you can there. The second question is the method used to test for the presence of proteins. So that is going to be, they want you to describe how you would undergo, right, a food test. The third one is a little bit more difficult. Now what it is what will happen, sometimes fertilizers, right, when the farmers use it, it goes into the water. And when it goes into the water and it's washed into the river, certain things happen, right, and that we're going to look at that process. So let's break it down one by one. So take the first question. That is what I've done here. Take the first question and break it up as well. They want you to put the structure and functions of carbohydrates and proteins. So let's start off, choose one first. Because if you try to do it all together, your brain is just going to get too muddled. So what do we start off? I'm going to use bullet points. Because sometimes it's easier, right, for you to, if you're really maybe writing an essay for the first time, to try and get those points across in a lot of essay forms, okay, in lots of paragraphs. So what is the structure of carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's a good thing that you can tell us over there. What else do we know about carbohydrates? The monomers of carbohydrates are called monosaccharides. Okay, that's, again, all right, that is the structure. We're busy with the structure of carbohydrates. What else do we know about monosaccharides? Right, they also have, if we have a monosaccharide plus a monosaccharide, we get a disaccharide. And what else do we know about carbohydrates? That if we have a chain, the polymer, if we put a lot of glucose molecules together, we get a polysaccharide. All right, so there we're looking already, we've got lots to write here. What you could have also said over here, that when it comes to monomers, we always have a ratio, hydrogen to oxygen, of 2:1. Okay, so there we're looking at the structure of carbohydrates. Let's have a look at functions. There's a few functions that you could have put over here. Now the functions, I'm going to just use a red pen quickly. What are the functions of carbohydrates? Number one, they are, most important, they are an energy source. They provide energy. They have got another function where they are also a reserve energy source. All right, reserve energy source. What else can they be? They can be structural. They can make things. Structural, they can build. And what are the two things they can build? They can build cellulose, all right, in cell walls, and they form part of chitin, right, which is that exoskeleton of insects to give insects that, right, hardness. If we have a look at functions, all right, structure of proteins, they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, right? Their monomers are amino acids, and they are joined together by a peptide chain. All right. And then we have a look at the functions. Guys, there are so many functions here. They're antibodies. All right, hemoglobin. They're part of the blood. Right, they're in your muscle. We need it to build muscle. Right, we need it, okay, to collagen in our skin. Right, they are enzymes. So there are lots of things that you could have put for this one over here. Right, the next thing is the presence of proteins, the food test. What am I looking for here? We're going to be quick because we're running out of time. Guys, you need to tell me that you must add food sample. Just tell me about egg, all right? And that you mix it with biuret solution. And then when you test it, right, you put it into a water bath so that speeds up the reaction. And then what is going to be a positive test? A positive test is that it's going to turn purple, right? Proteins are going to turn purple. And what's the last thing we're going to do? I'm going to explain it to you because I know we're running out of time. When fertilizer goes into the river, all right, what it does, that nitrogen starts on the top of the river, starts algae. I don't know if you've ever been to Hardebeesput Dam. Lots of algae on the top. And the sun can't come down. No oxygen can come down, nothing. And what happens to all here? The fish and the plants, they've got no oxygen. No oxygen. All right, and because they've got no oxygen, let's have a look here. So look here, here's the sun, and here's all this algae, all of it growing on top. So we can't get anything down to the water. There's no oxygen, there's nothing. And what happens to all the plants and the animals? They die, right? Everything underneath the algae dies, and it stinks and it smells. And the word here, this is the word you must know. It's called eutrophication, all right? And that is why we want to try and use healthier things like worms, all right, to their feces as a fertilizer rather than doing, all right, the nitrogen. Okay, guys, that's all we have time for today. Go and practice the questions, go and find past papers, all right, do the work. Okay, that's all for today. As I said, see you again next time. Bye.